Welcome once again to Dialogue on Public Issues. I'm John Chowning with Campbellsville University. I want to thank our faithful audience for watching our interviews during this time of pandemic as we seek to do interviews virtually via Microsoft Teams. And we do apologize on occasion when technology interrupts our speakers and freezes and so forth. But I think for the most part, it's worked very well over the past few months. Today, I'm very pleased to be interviewing a very close friend and a person that's well known here in the local community, the Honorable Max Wise, Kentucky State Senator. Welcome, Senator Wise.
Dr. Chowning, thank you so much, and thank you to Campbellsville University for having me on today.
Give us an update about the 16th Senatorial District, the counties you serve, just to remind our audience and the various committees and leadership positions that you are currently filling in the state Senate.
You know, John, I'm ending soon. This will be my end of my second term of office. It's interesting to look back and know how fast this has moved from coming in 2014, 2015 of how fast times do fly when you're in political office. I do represent the 16th Senate District, and that encompasses 7 counties: Taylor, Adair, Russell, Cumberland, Clinton, Wayne, and Macquarie counties. I'm also the chairman of the Senate Education Committee. I'm on numerous other committees of health and welfare, economic development and tourism. I'm also a member of Veterans, Military, and Public Protection, and also a member of the Economic Development and Labor Committee as well. So I've really enjoyed my time serving the 16th Senate District and looking forward to this upcoming session as we gavel back in on January 5th.
Before we delve into the heart of our interview, I would note 2021, there are no elections in Kentucky, so we can take a breather, and then you will be up for re-election in 2022. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes. So I'll be looking to seek my 3rd term of office. So it is nice to have that breather, like you mentioned. I think for most people, when it comes to commercial ads and radio ads, the way it's been, I tell you what, I could not imagine campaigning during the COVID-19. I'm sure it's probably been a little bit of a relief not to have attended so many chili suppers and fish fries, but at the same time, you have to still be out there in different ways.
Speaking of the pandemic and COVID-19, it certainly has had a major impact on all areas of life. You are one who has suffered with COVID-19. You could certainly tell us all about it. And it has had a major impact on all areas of life in Kentucky, the U.S., and all around the world. No sector of life has been left unimpacted. What are the major impacts that you see, Senator, on COVID-19 from COVID-19 on the Commonwealth?
You know, you're exactly right. And I remember vividly as we were in session last year when COVID started to make its way through, and that was in early parts of March, of when we started to see some rumblings of what was happening over in China in January, and then towards that month to get into February. But I think we still at that time, took it as it is a virus, but not to the escalation of what the impact would be. But you're exactly right. It has hit every sector of our society. If we were to say, one sector has been hit hardest than the other, I think it's very difficult for that to say, because if you look at it from retail and from business, and you also look at it from unemployment, it's countless the number of ways this is hit. But I'm also, as the chairman of the Education Committee, can say that it's hit education in a way that I don't think we probably thought in last March and April and May that we would have started back in August, and continuing now almost into January with still what COVID has done to the educational systems, that being K through 12 and also with post-secondary. And so I think where some sectors have tried to continue the way of life, I think they've tried their best to accommodate, if it's a workforce, of safety protocols. If you look at what still has happened with our public and even our private schools, it has really shifted the dynamics of education more than anything we probably ever could have imagined.
As we do this interview, I looked at the numbers just this morning, and by the time this interview is actually broadcast, there will have been well over 1,000 Taylor Countyans just in Taylor County
Yeah.
who have had COVID-19. That's 1 in 25 people walking around in Taylor County in late November of 2020. So it has had an impact. Yourself, you are a survivor, along with several other people. How has public education? You are chair of the committee, Senate Education Committee. How has our public education system done with COVID-19? And a question I think that is, do you think there will be some long-term adverse impacts for our students as a result of having to switch to non-traditional instruction and then back and forth between NTI or virtual instruction, back to the classroom, et cetera?
John, those are all good questions. I first just want to comment when you made that number. That's a real reality check. When I got COVID in July, I was case 59 in Campbellsville, Taylor County. So to hear that there is over 1,000, that is a very eye-opening, as you mentioned. In terms of education, I think looking at this, first of all, hats off to our superintendents, our principals, our teachers, our school board members, and also our health departments that have had to do something that I don't think when a school board member ran for office 2, 3, 4 years ago, would they've ever thought they would have to make decisions on opening, closing, delaying, starting schools like this. So I first just want to give grace, and that's to all of those individuals that are having to do what they've done. Also to parents, grandparents, guardians, students that have had to deal with this. I'm going to take my legislative cap off for a minute, and I'll say as a parent, it has been very, very challenging. Child care issues when it's had to be it had to be start up. I think this is speaking once again. I'm going to be from a dad. High school has been able to develop this very well with getting the material out there for students to do their work. I think high school students could do group work very good with distance learning. I think they have responsibility, but at the elementary primary level, we know that's a difficult setting. Just trying to keep the attention of a child in front of a monitor for a class time can be very challenging. And so for those teachers at all those different areas, this is very tough. I worry about middle school. I think a lot of times pre-COVID, we look at middle school as being a very strong foundational year to get ready for high school. And the way that this has also gone as well, this has been a challenge for, I think, a lot of our middle school students as well. And I hear that from a lot of parents whose students have struggled with distance learning. Now, at the same token, I think we've had some teachers that have excelled in this. They've shown some ways of learning that probably we didn't imagine what could have been done before with virtual learning. So I think it also has helped some students that maybe have excelled in areas of this that they've not done before with in-person learning. So there's a give and take with all this. NTI was never developed to be long-term learning. That was meant for snow days. That was meant for emergency days. So once again, teachers have had to really shift their model of teaching. And I think for them too, I think if you probably had an elementary, middle, or high school teacher, they would also tell you how much this has shifted with them of what they like. I think we all want students in the building. I think in-person learning is what we're used to, but we also know the safety and we also know the well-being of everyone that's involved. And we got to be very cautious.
Certainly, this has brought the best out in most everyone during the past several months, and our educators and parents and all of our school personnel as well as students are to be commended. And I might add, our colleges and universities have done a pretty remarkable job as well.
Yep.
It's one still affiliated in semi-retirement with Campbellsville. As of the Thanksgiving break, the colleges and universities have made it for the fall semester without having to close down. And all of our colleges in Kentucky, I think, are switching, as I understand, to virtual learning or online learning for the balance of the semester. And Campbellsville actually on November 20th switched. and then the students complete the semester and come back in January.
Yeah.
So I think that's a pretty remarkable thing as well. Comment?
I agree, and I do think as we go forward, you were mentioning there what we may be doing legislatively. I think a lot of this is going to be, we've got to bring in teachers, we've got to bring in professors, boots on the ground people to really show us, what it's like. I think it's easy for many of us that don't have children and are not involved in that education setting to sit back and cast stones and say that you should be doing this. Well, they know what's best. So I look forward to listening to those education professionals and seeing what models we need to be working on. We have a new Kentucky Commissioner of Education, Dr. Glass. I look forward to working with him in his role of seeing what needs to be done. And I do agree that this has truly changed education in a lot of areas. I think the hardest part has been the workforce and the education when we've had to shift and go all virtual, of families having to adapt to that. Working
Right.
parents, daycare, childcare, that's the hardest issue I think that most families struggle with.
There are some have-nots out there who really have struggled
Yeah.
during this time. Single-family parents or single-family households and single-parent households. I'm trying to say, and others
Yes.
that don't have the resources that others of us do have and opportunities. You were a leading proponent, probably the leading proponent of school safety legislation in 2018 and 2019, along with State Representative Bam Carney and others. What is the status of the implementation of that important legislation? How's it working? And I note kind of a notation parenthetically that with pandemic this year, we haven't seen the full impact of it as yet. But how's it going, and what additional work needs to be done?
You know what? When COVID happened, and we were in the budget year that we were in, we completely had to shift gears, and who knows what the funding would have been for school safety. Because of COVID, we had to sit back and we had to really look at an unexpected future. And so while we did make a commitment to school safety and alongs of resources, mental health funding that would go towards that, I would like to have seen if we had had a non-COVID pandemic happen of what we probably could have committed to. I think our A&R committee did their best at funding that the way that they did. But I think we probably could have done more. I think we probably could have done more in a lot of aspects of state government, but it was like throwing wet spaghetti on the wall and seeing what could stick at the time, because we didn't know what the future was going to be with revenues and receipts, things such as that. I think right now it's been difficult for us to go in and assess schools and to see what protocols they're doing well, because so many schools are shut down. And because of that, I think the Division of School Safety is probably going to have to spend, in 2021 of doing more of these on-campus assessments that are taking place, because students aren't in the buildings for the most part. So we're really right now in such an issue of where it's a question mark of what this has done. My commitment on the way forward of this, it's not so much as the threats of gun violence and things like that. It's going to be the mental health of students. We have got to be committed to school counselors, social workers, school nurses, because when students do return to school, and hopefully that's going to be in 2021, where we have a lot of this behind us, that's where I think the commitment's got to be, because we have seen suicide rates and things that are happening in Kentucky, and probably some things that we don't know what's happened to these children, that we need to make sure they have the mental health capacity and resources they need.
Looking to the 2021 General Assembly session, what will be the major issues on the table, starting, of course, with the budget? Explain why this midterm session, short session, will be different than normal.
Well, like we mentioned, for last year, we decided to do a one-year budget in 2020, and then we decided to come back this year. What normally this would have been the year to do the two-year budget. This would have been the year for just a 30-day session, excuse me. we've had to shift in 2021 to do a one-year budget as well. And so priority number one in the legislature will be the budget. We're already seeing different departments and agencies start to present their legislative priorities of what they would like in their budget allocations. So legislation will be secondhand. The top priority will be the budget. And this is, as far as my knowledge, this has not been done before in decades of a one-year budget in a 30-day session. So this will be monumental. That's going to be a heavy lift to do so. I know we're up for the challenge to do it, but I really believe other legislation right now should be on the back burner. Focus on the budget, focus on those priorities. Not to say there won't be legislation, because there will, but the focus is the budget.
How is the budget forecast for the current year as well as for the coming year?
Right now we're still researching and still analyzing. There's some things that have been very promising. I think the thing that most people aren't aware of is we've had the CARES money come in. We're still waiting for some of that from the federal Congress to see what's going to be going forward. I worry about 2022. I worry about the foreseeable years ahead. And we really start then to see the impact that COVID-19 has played on the state. The unemployment issue right now, we still have over 70,000 Kentuckians that still not receive unemployment insurance. That's been an abysmal issue that we've had to deal with. Our labor cabinet's having to work on that. And once again, we're seeing, just with this program run today, more of a shutdown is going to happen in certain aspects of retail as it relates to restaurants. So, as we go forward, in this budget year in 2021, I don't know right now per se what those receipts look like to give us a true figure on that. But we're going to have to forecast after 2021 what's the next 2 years ahead. And I think that's going to be the biggest challenge.
Noting your comment that you've already made that the budget obviously is primary going into 2021 session, what other primary issues do you see?
There's a big, in terms of constituents contacting us, I will tell you there's a lot of people wanting us to do anything to roll back some of the executive branch power that the governor's had. I can't tell you how many emails, how many messages I've received from people saying, why can't you do anything about this right now? When shutdowns have happened and the situations we've seen, many people don't understand. We do not have power from April 15th to January 5th. Our legislative power and authority is gone unless we're called into a special session, which we weren't, and that's under the governor's choice to do so. But I do think there will be a push and there'll be a look at this of seeing, last session we ended with Senate Bill 150, and that was able to get businesses still going and to keep them moving. I think you're going to see that there's going to be a push as well to see what authority the legislature will step up and try to prevent some industries from having to completely shut down. And so we want to work with the governor. We've tried to have open dialogue, but we need dialogue with all branches of government more than any time in our country's history, in our Commonwealth's history too. So I think that's going to be something.
Excuse me. Go ahead.
I think also gas tax, I think that's going to be looked at. I think tax reform will have to be looked at and discussed just because sometimes we don't know some of the receipts to know where we're at in some of these aspects. I think when we talk about roads and bridges, those don't just happen. Those happen because of having to take some measures. And so, but it's going to be a difficult time. Families are struggling. And, we mentioned taxes. If it's even pre-pandemic or during a pandemic, that's a hard sell sometimes to get all legislatures buying, especially one now that has 15 new House members coming in. So a 75-25 super duper majority and a 30-8 super majority in the Senate. It'll be interesting to see if we can tackle some of those issues such as that.
As you well know, the governor's authority, executive authority, was challenged. The case was appealed to the Kentucky Supreme Court. The Supreme Court recently unanimously upheld the governor's exercise of the emergency power to implement his restrictions related to COVID-19. You've already indicated some of the constituency emails and phone calls you're receiving. Uh, do you think a governor should have such emergency powers? Obviously, you've already indicated that from your perspective, uh, probably this governor has exceeded those powers. But I guess my question is, what are reasonable governmental executive authority in emergency public health circumstances,
You know,
such as COVID-19?
I think one of the things that we could look at doing is detailing a timeline of how long that executive authority runs through an issue such as a pandemic, without having the legislature brought back in for the legislature then to respond to their constituents. That could be 30 days, that could be 45 days. But I think that probably will be something that the legislature will look at going forward. We know that this pandemic is something that was not surprising to some people, of knowing that this could happen. And that's not to say that another pandemic can't happen in years from now. I think hurricanes, natural disasters, those type of things,
Right.
we think about governors, executive authority, but we're talking about something that's drawn on for months now since we gaveled out in April. And I think that's where we maybe could look at saying the executive authority runs for 30, 45 days, and then making the legislature have to be brought back into session.
Obviously, a pandemic is different than uh, a flu, uh, season. A pandemic in my lifetime has been, I don't know that there's ever been another pandemic has swept the world. So you would acknowledge some allowance
Yes.
for executive authority in such an episode. And certainly, I wouldn't know how to define pandemic in the context of legislative and executive authority. That's something for the experts, such as yourself, to opine on and define for us. But go ahead. I think you were going to make a comment.
You're exactly correct. Once again, we just want, in terms of communication between the executive and legislative branch, to be there. We've not seen that, and I will say, as someone who is trying to champion listening and working with people, that's been very difficult for us many times to as the legislative branch not have some communication lines. And we can also say that's maybe not happened with previous governors, but during times like this, we need to make sure that the branches are communicating well, maybe giving some insight as to what decisions may be coming forth. And that way, the legislative leadership can opine also and say, well, what about this? Can we consider looking at this? And if we're all working together, I think that's what constituents across the state also want to see.
On other issues, would you agree with some authorities that governors of both parties maybe have exceeded executive authority on occasion?
Oh,
such
definitely.
As reorganizing
Yep.
state boards and commissions and so on.
Definitely. And, I think even when we had to redo recently the Kentucky Board of Education with that, I think that there's times there that we need to be fair. And I think that the governors do not need to overstep. And I think that's where under previous Governor Bevin, the legislative branch bowed up and said, no, you're not going to do some of these things. And so that's kind of what I mean by having that communication that needs to be there.
Right. Secretary of State Michael Adams has recently proposed some general election reforms in Kentucky. I don't know if you've had time to study those as yet. What are the chances of those reforms, and specifically maybe for extended early voting in Kentucky?
First of all, I just want to say it was great to see Kentucky not have any mishaps. I think we became a very beacon for other states to look at. I think the national media started out initially didn't know what Kentucky had done of working between a Democrat governor and Republican Secretary of State. But, hats off that we had an election that went flawless. The early voting was positive. I will tell you, many constituents have talked to me that like that proposal that we did. I don't know if 30 days going forward will be there, maybe 15, maybe 10. I could see that.
Mm-hmm.
But also, I will say that there's also a push of not doing mail-in voting, and so I don't yet know what that's going to be. I'm just talking to
Hmm.
constituents that reach out to me. I get a lot of communication from constituents, and I read all of those. But I do think that we will look to go forward and probably not go back to the previous ways. I think there's great opportunities there. And once again, the pandemic presented some opportunities. I think we took advantage of that.
Seem to have worked very well.
Yeah.
And Kentucky was a model. And hats off also to our 120 county clerks.
Exactly. And the poll
They
workers
seem
too.
to have done it absolutely. And I sent a note to our own Mark Carney here locally the day after the election, congratulating him and his team for a job well done. So it's good for Kentucky to be a model, as you note.
Yes.
Let me just ask you to report to our audience on the status of, you would expect me to bring this up, the Heartland Park and project that I've been working on for 20 years, soon to be 20 years in December, when the first meeting was held on the campus of CU with then Congressman Ron Lewis and myself. Do you think its completion is nearing? Can we actually believe it is about to be completed in the near future, Senator? And we're down to under a minute.
I do. I think that what we've seen since the Republicans took the House and the Senate majorities, I think you've seen the Heartland Parkway progress faster under lightning speed in the last few years. We've seen it for a number of years. That's also a testament to you and all of those that advocated and have pushed for this. I think now when you drive through the Heartland area here of Taylor, Adair, Marion, when you see barrels out there, you know that things are moving. You like to see barrels. I ask for everyone's patience, progress, but we are moving ahead. I think we're going to see that. And also, it doesn't help now that the new Senate Transportation Committee Chairman is Senator Jimmy Higdon from Marion County. I do think we're in great shape as we go forward.
Well, let me publicly thank you. And I would also give a shout out to Senator Higdon,
Yes.
Who was our state senator until redistricting. And the two of you, along with Representative Carney and others, have led the charge in Frankfort. And we appreciate that and express publicly our gratitude to you for all that you and your colleagues have done. Thank you very much. And we wish you a very blessed holiday season coming up, and stay safe.
Thank you, John. Good to see you. Thank you all so much.
Yes, sir. This is John Chowning with State Senator Max Wise, and thanking our audience for being with us for Dialogue on Public Issues.